Our focus standard for today's lesson comes from Grade 7, Statistics and Probability, Standard 1. Identify random sampling that produce representative samples and support valid inferences. Our topic for today's lesson comes from Data and Statistics, Random Sampling. Our essential question is, what characteristics determine a sample is random and representative of a given population? Please take a moment, pausing the video if you need to copy down the topic and essential question into your header along with today's date, side your question column, and your note column, and resume the video when you're ready to begin. It's important to understand why random samples are important. So generating a random sample is important to ensure that the data is representative of the given population. We're going to be using the random sample to make inferences or conclusions about the entire population. So it's important that the subset of the group that we select is a valid representation of the larger population. So here are the important characteristics of a random sample. Each member of the population must be equally likely to be selected for the sample. It's also important that the sample size is proportional to the size of the total population. Third, the selection method for the sample is carefully crafted to avoid bias. This is the very reason for random sampling. With this information, let's go ahead and we're going to look at some examples and decide which would be the best random sampling of the given population. For our first example, we're talking about the teachers at Selwood Middle School want to find out what activities students would be most interested in for the end of year celebration. So they A, survey the 8th grade students, B, poll students entering the front door, C, send a survey to every 10th student enrolled in Selwood Middle School. So thinking about these characteristics that make a random sample, what do you think would be the best option for teachers at Selwood Middle School to use to get a random sample of students at Selwood Middle School? If you said C, send a survey to every 10th student enrolled, I would agree with you. And let's talk a little bit about why. If we survey only the students, 8th grade students, that means that not every member of the population is equally likely. That doesn't include 6th grade students or 7th grade students. So because of that, it would not be a random sample. What about for polling students entering the front door? Why might that be a problem or not generate a random sample? Well, at our school, only the 7th grade students enter at the front door. So once again, we're kind of in the same boat as we were with A. By sending a survey to every 10th student enrolled, that includes 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade students, and if we're going down the list and taking every 10th student, everybody has an equally likely chance, and it is proportional to the size of the population, and there's no bias. Teachers aren't asking only the students in their class, so on and so forth. Let's take a look at another example. Number 2. A candidate running for a seat on the City Council wants to better understand what issues are most important to the registered voters in Portland. So she, A, goes door to door in her neighborhood interviewing voters, B, conducts a phone poll of every 100th registered voter, C, surveys shoppers as they exit the local mall. Which of these do you think would best generate a random sample that would be representative of the population, which is including all registered voters in the city of Portland? You said B, conducts a phone poll of every 100th registered voter. I would agree with you. Once again, it's important to think about why the other ones are not as good of representation. If she's only interviewing people in her neighborhood, it's allowing her own bias. She has lived in that neighborhood for her own reasons, and she's only interviewing people like her who have chosen to live in that neighborhood. If she's only surveying shoppers as they exit the local mall, that's a very small group of people in the city that are likely to be at the mall. Once again, it's not representative of all registered voters. But if she went down a list of all registered voters in the city of Portland and called every 100th of them, everybody has an equally likely chance of being on that list because they all are, and they are randomly being selected as being every 100th person. She doesn't know who is going to be the 100th person. That's what makes it random. Let's go ahead and take a look at a third example. A national car manufacturer is trying to determine what color is most popular as they prepare to launch their next new car. So they A, tally the color of all the cars in the employee parking lot. B, produce a radio ad for listeners to text a number to send in their favorite color of a car. C, analyze car sales data from the past year, tallying the color of every 1,000th car sold. Which do you think would be the best for selecting a random sample of the greater population? If you said C, I would agree with you. Only looking at the cars in the local employee parking lot is not very representative. If you put out a radio ad texting listeners, you're only likely to get people A, listening to that radio station, and B, who have the time or are willing to respond to that ad. And usually that is people with a really strong opinion and more outgoing of a person. So again, not as representative. So therefore, C would be the best choice. Let's look at our fourth and final example. Web leaders at Selwood Middle School want to find out what type of assemblies students would be interested in for next year. So they A, assign a number to every student in the school and use a random number generator to select 100 students to ask. B, each ask their 5 closest friends. Or C, survey the first person they see in each of their classes. What do you think would be the best choice for conducting a random sample that is representative of the population of all students at Selwood Middle School? If you said A, I agree with you. Once again, it mentions the word random, so that is a good indicator. Random number generators are a great tool to use when selecting random sample sizes. And 100 students is a pretty good proportion of the 600 students that are in the school. So that means 1 out of 6 students would be surveyed. It's a really good data set. So A would be our best choice. That's going to conclude our video lesson today on random sampling. Please make sure your notes are complete and come ready to discuss more about random sampling in class.